Cabinet ministers, including PM Lee, at a press conference earlier today, addressing DPM Heng's decision to step down as the leader of the fourth generation team.
The Straits Times' Deputy News Editor Royston Sim is here with us to break this all down. Welcome, Roy. Roy, DPM Heng stepping aside as the 4G leader and essentially taking himself out of consideration as the next MP. Quite an unexpected development, isn't it? I mean, considering he was poised to take over PM Lee.
Yeah, I think unexpected development is probably an understatement. It's in terms of the significance, it's quite a seismic announcement. I don't think many people would have seen this coming at all. It wasn't that long ago when the 4G coalesced and decided on DPM Heng as their leader. It was November 2018. So between then and now, it hasn't been that much time. And although PM had said, last year after the G that he would stay on for as long as it took, to hand over to a successor, hand the country over to a successor in good shape. I don't think there was any hint at all, that DPM Heng would step aside as the 4G leader. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so while he is stepping down as the fourth generation team leader, it's important to stress that, of course, DPM Heng will remain as the Deputy Prime Minister as well as Coordinating Minister for Economic Policies. But on the other hand, he will relinquish his finance portfolio during the next cabinet reshuffle, which PM Lee said is in about 2 weeks. What does this mean, Roy, in terms of how significant his role will be in the cabinet?
So he will still play a major role in the cabinet. He's still the Deputy Prime Minister. He still will have oversight of all the economic policies. So he will still shape, the broad strokes of major plans, economic plans. And PM has also said that he expects DPM Heng to sort of play a mentoring role to the younger ministers, along with himself, with the two senior ministers, Teo Chee Hean and Tharman Shanmugaratnam. So he will still be actively involved. He will still give his input in cabinet discussions. So he will remain a presence. But I think what will be interesting will be to see who replaces him as finance minister in the next reshuffle. Because bearing in mind the finance portfolio is a heavyweight portfolio, and it's the previous prime ministers, all of them have held the finance portfolio, including PM Lee himself and DPM Heng, until he stepped aside. So it will be interesting to see, who is appointed to that post, and I think that will also lend itself to the reading of tea leaves, as to who could be next after DPM Heng.
Yep.
Let's talk about the DPM role as well. In time to come, will Mr. Heng also step down from the Deputy Prime Minister position?
I think it's too early to say. It is possible, but you could also envision a scenario where you have PM Lee, you have DPM Heng, and perhaps a younger 4G minister. So it is possible that he steps down. It's also possible that he's at some point in time. I don't think that will happen anytime soon. But it's also possible, that he stays on as DPM till the end of the term. I mean, PM did say that, in terms of the cabinet reshuffle and cabinet changes, it's a continuing evolution, and perhaps the younger ministers will step up and assume more responsibilities when they are ready. What time, when that would be, that remains to be seen.
Okay. Well, today's announcement, it definitely opens up the field on who will be the next 4G leader. Who are the front runners, you think? Especially since you have to consider that long runway, that phrase that was bandied about today.
So the field pretty much is wide open, as you have pointed out. And I think when looking at who are the possible front runners, we'll go back to 2018 and look at the names that were thrown up then. So one of them is definitely Trade and Industry Minister Chan Chun Sing, who was basically DPM Heng's deputy, when the 4G leaders decided on their number one. DPM Heng said he had chosen Mr. Chan as number two. So certainly, I think Mr. Chan would still be up there as one of the names to watch in terms of this succession race. And I suppose the other person whose name has been bandied about before was Transport Minister Ong Ye Kung. So I think he would be another person to watch. So both of them are in their early 50s. so younger than DPM Heng, who is 60 this year. And I suppose the other minister who has been, who is younger but has been sort of rising in terms of prominence would be Mr. Desmond Lee, who has sort of seen an expanded portfolio with the National Development Portfolio. And I suppose I would be remiss to omit Education Minister Lawrence Wong. His star has really been rising. He's, helmed the multi-ministry task force on COVID-19. He's been very much in the spotlight. He's handled it, well. He's been clear in terms of, explaining the situation, calming presence. And also, he was the person that the PAP chose to, front its post-GE sort of post-mortem to the party cadres and also to the media. I think he would be another person to look out for as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So Roy, so you've mentioned these names. We want to know now what's the process of selecting this next 4G leader then, and how soon will the decision be made? Because we know that earlier on PM Lee did mention as well.
Sort of timeline, right?
Sort of a timeline in his speech.
Yeah. So the PAP, selects its leaders by what's the phrase? I mean, basically everyone has to agree, by consensus.
Right.
They agree on a leader. They pick a leader by consensus. So, in the previous round, and even in previous transitions, the team had sort of at that time had agreed on who they would choose to lead them. So likewise, back in 2018, the PAP leaders had decided, it was going to be DPM Heng. Yeah. So I would imagine this time round they will have to go back to the drawing board and once again go through that process of, deciding among themselves who is the best man to lead them and be sort of first among equals. So they would have to sort of go through the whole process again, given all that's happened and with the pandemic still with us and uncertainties in the future. Who do they think is the best person that will be able to lead Singapore into the future, after PM Lee hands over the reins? So in terms of the timeline, that's still very uncertain. I mean, PM Lee, as you mentioned, gave a ballpark sort of figure or sort of time frame. He said it's not going to take a few months. It's not going to be as quick as that. Yeah. But he hopes they will be able to come to a decision before the next general election, so that they can go to the next GE, with, I guess, electorate clear on who is going to, take over from PM Lee as the next leader, or who is the PAP's next leader. So
and GE has to be held by 2025, right?
Yep,
that's right.
That's right. So, I guess he is hoping that by then, by the time the next GE comes around, the 4G leaders would have decided, and who is going to be the next leader, and so that when they go into the election, everyone knows who the next leader will be.
Okay, but for now, PM Lee said in his this development has set back his succession plan.
Yes, that's right.
And so for the foreseeable future, he will remain, PM Lee will remain Prime Minister, possibly until the next GE, you think?
That is possible. I think he did not close the door on that. I mean, he has made clear that he wants to hand over the baton. He doesn't want to stay on longer than necessary. But he also said that, he will hand over when his successor is ready to take over. Whether that will happen by the GE, it's possible. But it may also be the case where the next person, the PAP's 4G leader, may only be ready to take over the reins after the GE. So in which case we will see sort of a repeat of GE 2020, where it was PM Lee leading the PAP into battle, and then handing over the reins to his successor after the election.
Right. Well, I mean, there have been older world leaders. I mean, US President Joe Biden comes to mind, of course.
That's right.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you for joining us today, Roy.
Thank you, Olivia.
Yeah, we've been speaking with Royston Sim, Deputy News Editor at the Straits Times.